Wall Street bracing for a major escalation in President Trump's global trade war one day before the president announces sweeping new tariffs expected to impact markets and industries across this globe. Now, the stock market closing with mixed results here in what's been a volatile trading week ahead of tomorrow's historic economic event. The president promising to impose reciprocal tariffs on imports from American trade partners beginning tomorrow. And these tariffs, he says, will free the U.S. from a reliance on foreign goods. He's calling it Liberation Day, and the White House teasing that it's a landmark day in the nation's history.
Looking ahead to tomorrow, April 2nd, 2025, will go down as one of the most important days in modern American history. Our country has been one of the most open economies in the world, and we have the consumer base hands down, the best consumer base. But too many foreign countries have their markets closed to our exports. This is fundamentally unfair.
Well, for more, I want to bring in our ABC News chief business correspondent, Rebecca Jarvis from our New York bureau. Rebecca, wonderful to have you here with us. And you've been watching both the markets here in the U.S. and overseas as well. How does this all set the stage for tomorrow?
Well, Kana, when you look at the markets really over the last quarter since the start of this year, there's been this uncertainty overhang, and that is around this question of tariffs. The president has made a handful of announcements about tariffs on things like aluminum and steel, but tomorrow is really the big one. And we still don't have details on what it will ultimately be. There's been speculation. The number 20% tariffs across the board has been floated. But for businesses that are trying to manage their way through these questions, it's been a really difficult ride. And for investors, you've seen it reflected, that uncertainty reflected in the stock market. The S&P 500, which is the thing that's in most investment accounts, most retirement savings accounts, is down about 4.6% this year and off pretty significantly from the highs, which were hit just a handful of weeks ago, Kana.
It sounds like from the White House, the president has made some sort of decision and some sort of determination. But you're right, Rebecca. How are business leaders supposed to make a decision with all this uncertainty?
Well, and it's not just what's happening tomorrow when we ultimately get an announcement from the president about what those tariffs will look like, both the size, who will be tariffed, as well as how long these tariffs may last. And we might not even know how long they'll last based on tomorrow's announcement. But the other key question is what kind of retaliation is there? Do foreign countries who are now paying higher tariffs or facing higher tariffs to send their goods here to the United States, do they retaliate with their own tariffs? And that's why you hear things like tariff war, trade war, because once the tit for tat begins, that's what really drives prices up. And consumers ultimately face higher costs, because if you're a company right now in the United States that is taking a lot of imports, you're paying that higher price. Once these tariffs go into effect, you're paying that higher tariff at the border. Most companies do pass that off to consumers. And already we're looking at things, for example, with cars, which a lot of cars that are made here in the United States, Kana, they're made in the U.S., but they're made with parts that are made overseas. And the estimates range anywhere from $6,000 to $8,700 higher if the tariffs are in place for up to a year. And it really puts a crimp on some of the less expensive cars that exist, cars below $30,000 here in the U.S. I've talked to analysts who say we might not see that kind of car available here in the U.S. because the supplies will dwindle in light of these tariffs. But there are, of course, the longer term objectives that these tariffs put in place, which is to create more activity here in the United States, create more manufacturing here in the United States. That is a much longer term objective, because for a company like a car company, an automaker, to say we're going to spend billions of dollars to build new manufacturing here in the United States, those are the kinds of decisions that take place over many years, many months. They take a lot of money, and they're big gambles.
A big gamble, and certainly you don't know how long the consumer can really hold out in all of that. And Rebecca, you mentioned possible retaliation, right? So maybe it's not retaliation right away, but it does sound like both Mexico and Canada are prepared to at least respond in some fashion. What do we know about that?
Yeah, you can anticipate Mexico, Canada, China, the European Union, all of these places that we do business with, they're going to come out swinging with their own objectives here, because everybody wants, the entire world wants to be the place that exporters can send their goods to and be the best opportunity for them.
Rebecca Jarvis, such a pleasure to have you with us today. Thank you for being here.